Thank you for coming this morning. The title of this, as you have seen in your order of service, the inherent worth and dignity of every person and not excluding ourselves. It was about 6 years ago or so when Barb mentioned Unitarian Universalism to me. I've never heard of it before. And what is a Unitarian Universalist? Does that mean people who are hoping that the different universes come together? I have no idea, never heard of it. Right? So Barb suggested reading, well, how about you read the principles? Okay, cool. So I read the principles and I stopped right at the very first one, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And don't tell anybody, but to this day, I'm not sure what the rest of them are. Because that's really all I needed to see. That's really all I needed to read. I really wasn't sure at the time why that resonated so much with me, but it seemed to, subconsciously, inherently, it resonated with me. And so, well, as most of you know, Barb had sent a letter to the editor, and now here we are as a UU congregation in Schuylkill County, doing something that I'm very passionate about in our beliefs, and how especially, obviously, the first one, the first principle. So on my journey, some of you know I am an employment specialist for people with disabilities. And in my travels, in my job, I get to meet and work with people who, in a lot of ways, in a lot of different times, struggle with their own inherent worth and dignity. Whether it be because they were treated a certain way, whether it be at school or by their friends, sometimes their own families. Just to give you some examples, I'll give you some specific examples without naming names. We get referrals from other agencies, and the person is sent to us, and we sit down. And the things I do in my job are, I help put a resume together. We do mock interviews. We help complete applications. We go with them on job coaching on site, hip to hip if needed, because they have their struggles. So I was referred to a young man, and I went to his house. He was 18 at the time, and he was still living at home with his parents. So I'm sitting across from him at the dining room table, on one side, Dad on the other. So we were talking, the young man and I were talking about his goals and things like that. I want to work. His parents look at him and say, you can't do this. You're just gonna screw it up, but they use different terminology. His own parents, as I'm sitting across from them. And he's just looking at me and I'm looking at him. I said, how about you and I go out on the front porch? So he and I go out on the front porch. I said, tell me what it is you want to do. Well, all I do is sit at home and watch video games, or play video games and watch television. Do you want to work? Do you want to do something other than this? Yes. Okay, so we'll make that happen. The reasoning, one of the reasons of their, I don't know if I want to say attack, but what they said to him was that he was on collecting benefits. So if he were to get a job and earn his own money, the benefits would go away. So I helped the young man set up his own bank account. We got him a job. He's been successful at since then. He opened up his own bank account. It was direct deposit. The money went right in there. And I said, if you want to give your family money because you live there as rent or whatever, you're the first person to have access to that. So, and that's how that played out. So he has his own bank account. He's working full time. He comes to work every day with a smile on his face. Inherent worth and dignity. His own inherent worth and dignity had been minimized. And it was as a result of a traumatic brain injury when he was little. So it was all things out of his control, as it is out of everyone's control with disability or those of us who are healthy. So I just want to share a few stories regarding some of the things that I have come across that just reminds me that how important that is, especially when we're dealing with other people. Another quick story, I had a hearing impaired young lady who had like 98% hearing loss. So for argument's sake or intents and purposes, she was deaf. And we had gotten her a job in a distribution center. And she had been asking for an interpreter because she's very good at one-on-one, reading lips and understanding. But when there's like team meetings and groups, it's hard because she doesn't see who's talking or what have you. So she was being trained on a job. Now, mind you, this is a very large national, or actually international corporation. And she had asked to have an interpreter be there for just a couple hours as she learns a job because she wants to understand everything that's involved, including the safety parts of it. And they said, no, that's too much of a cost. It was like $40 or $50 an hour. And she only wanted them for a couple of hours just to understand. So sometimes you have to know your audience as to who you're talking to when you're trying to persuade or at least help them understand what's going on. So international company, a lot of times has to do with the bottom line. So I had a meeting with their HR manager, and I sat down with them and I said, she's asking for an interpreter. She needs to understand every aspect of the job. And he gave me that's pretty expensive for an interpreter. So I said, well, let's take a look at the big picture here for a minute. I said, let's suppose that you decide not to do it. She's having everything explained, including the safety parts of it, and she gets hurt. Let's talk about that for a second. And what do you think would come from that? Let's take away potential for lawsuits. Let's just talk about the PR. Imagine CNN or whoever not getting a hold of a story of the poor little deaf girl being hurt on a job for a major company that says we have billions in profits, but you don't want to pay $50 an hour? Okay. And then I brought up the financial part of it. So it came down to talking about the bottom line to remind the employer about her worth and dignity. The next day, they had an interpreter on site. And I'm happy to say, I would call it irony, they had to pay double because it was short notice. So it kind of worked out. It worked out for the young lady as well. That's just two quick examples of what I have seen and what I do, and really helping people rebuild their inherent worth, or maybe even discover their own worth. Reverend Bob mentioned during a couple of services here that he talked about myself being vegan and how that is a great example globally of honoring other people's inherent worth and dignity. I did a sermon here, I'm not sure, 6 months ago, a year ago, I'm not sure, talking about that. I wanted to make it a little smaller. I wanted to kind of talk about the people we come in contact on a daily basis and how do we remember or honor their inherent worth and dignity. Let's start with driving. On our way here, I had somebody beep their horn like crazy. As a matter of fact, to me, on my way here, they were behind me because I wasn't pulling out of an intersection fast enough that they're liking. And in all honesty, I've been guilty of doing a few things like that. My wife will not say anything out loud. I'm not gonna stand here and say I'm perfect. I am not perfect. Have I had my moments? Yes. But when in that kind of interaction, when let's say somebody cuts you off and they're giving you the finger, they're acting out toward you, it's pretty easy to return the favor, isn't it? It's pretty easy to say right back at you, buddy, but we really don't know what their story is. We don't know if that person just found out their parent is very, very sick, they're on the way to the hospital. We don't know what their story is that would bring out that kind of anger and something, at least that I feel, isn't really that important, just driving. So I wanted to talk today about making things a little smaller than the global aspect that Reverend Bob had talked about. Now, here's another one for you. Facebook. Yeah, and politics on Facebook. Ooh, right. I have been known to, I know, right? I have been known to express my opinion sometimes maybe a little too strongly. Especially in the political realm, given everything that's been going on, as I'm sure you guys are all aware of. And I have had to stop and remind myself that I am the same as the person who is arguing with me. No matter how opposite their political viewpoint is, no matter how angry they are or whatever, because here's the thing. I believe, we all want to feel safe. I want to feel safe walking out my door. I want to feel safe traveling abroad. I want to feel safe visiting someone in a city. I want to feel protected. The difference between me and that person who has such a strong opinion opposite of mine is that we disagree on how to make that happen. The core of it is that we're the same. We just have different opinions or a different thought process on how to make that happen. There was, and sometimes your interactions could be with family members, siblings, and if you're in a family with siblings, you may have a label attached to you. You could be the perfect one. You could be the black sheep. Either way, neither one of them are very promoting of your worth. Because let's take a look at the perfect one. You're perfect. Okay, so does that mean if you're in school, for instance, anything lower than a 4.0, what are you doing? You're failing. That makes that person a little smaller, doesn't it? Inherent worth and dignity. You're minimizing that person's worth, even though they're the perfect one, because that's already putting them up here. Or the black sheep, let's look at the opposite. The black sheep of the family, so be it. Well, you'll never amount to anything. How often have we heard people have said that from their own families or whatever, friends, what have you. You'll always be this, or you'll always be that, or you'll always, again, it's minimizing, it's not making it equal. Inherent worth and dignity. Just to backtrack just a hair, yesterday on Facebook, I put up a thing about a local pizza shop that I went and visited to pick up pizza, and yes, it was vegan pizza, no cheese, for those of you who have questioned that. And as I'm sitting there waiting for the person, for the pizza to be finished, I'm watching the dishwasher come in and out, come in and out, come in and out, clearing tables next to families and what have you. And I actually know this person because he's on Megan's list as a perpetrator. And I'm thinking, how is this person working in this kind of environment, clearing off tables next to, and I saw like there was like a group of 3 8 to 10-year-old girls sitting at the table next to what he was clearing out. I put that question out there on Facebook, and of course it stirred up some emotions, and that's great, because discussion is good. Doesn't mean we have to agree on everything. It helps see different viewpoints. And one of the things brought up was that, everyone deserves a second chance. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, inherent worth and dignity of everyone, including the people that I feel or have the label of being vile or however you want to call it. But when that person is working in that sort of environment, There are a lot of other jobs out there that they don't have interaction with kids. That's my problem with that. Not about the person himself, but about the possibilities of that. Because I'm sure if you, and there's actually two of them there who work there, but I'm sure if you would have asked that young man that I know, if when he was 5 years old, what do you want to do as an adult? Do you think he would have said that? I don't think anyone would say, I want to grow up to be a, I don't know, drug addict, murderer. You ask a small child that, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a policeman, I want to, there's this inherent need to help and to have your own worth. And sometimes that is very hard to see in an adult when we have a certain interaction with that person. And I struggle with that, absolutely. You know, because that's what I'll speak for myself, that's what I do. I come up with, sometimes I'll labels, just like I said about being the good daughter, the good son, or the black sheep. You know, I don't see the person anymore, I see the actions. You know, and again, inherent, I will repeat this over and over, inherent worth and dignity. As an adult, there's still an inherent worth and dignity. But when we have interactions with people on a close basis, and sometimes they can get angry, how do we honor our own self-worth in these situations? Do we engage in the angry interaction? Does it become a battle of, oh yeah, well you're this, oh yeah, well you're that, and before you know it, I'm not honoring my own inherent worth and dignity by acting in an angry way. Now I'm not saying don't ever get angry. Of course, it's an emotion. We're built with those emotions. To me, it feels like it's how we do it, how we present our anger, or at least something like that in a productive way. Because there's a saying, I go to support meetings once a week, and one of the sayings is, hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. That middle finger that cut you off, that person that cut you off, they're hurting in some way. What's that person going to do? Well, lash out and hurt me. And so on down the line. Some things we don't think about in our general conversations when we have with others, with our friends, with our family. One thing that was explained to me is the word should. Should is a shaming word. Ervil, you should have been here weeks ago. Where have you been, Ervil?
At weddings.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I think you should have been here. You see how that can be shaming. Because Ervil, I know you have not life outside of here, but I think I know better than you, and you should have been here.
You're not living in my skin.
One can dream, Ervil. But do you see what I mean? When you have this conversation with someone, you know, you should be doing this. You're the perfect, you're the good child, you're the smart one. You should be getting a 4.0 or higher. You should be should. According to who? Me. I know better than you. I know what your struggles are. I know what your struggles are. Have I lived your life and had your interactions with people? Have I had your experiences? Am I you? No, I'm not. So maybe try and keep that in mind. This is starting to feel like a lecture. I'm not lecturing. I'm just giving you things to think about. I would like to give you things to think about in your interactions. You know, and those are things that I try to do. Am I always successful? Not so much. But I try. I think that's the best that we can really do, is try. And try to remember the inherent worth and dignity of every person. You know, but we're consistently tested, aren't we? Consistently. Inside our own minds. we reduce our own inherent worth and dignity, don't we? You know, am I good enough? No, I'm not good enough. Can I even do this? I can't do this. We all have our self-doubt. You know, some have more self-doubt than others. And where does that even come from? The voices in our head that maybe we heard this growing up. You know, a close friend of mine, I'm going to throw some lines, some quotes out there to you, told me that we're born into this world able to give love freely, but sometimes we're born into a family that's unable to receive it. Let you think about that one for a second. Because that's what we are. We're born into this world able to love freely. We don't come into this world with baggage or predisposed opinions of people. We come into this world to love freely. And sometimes the family that we're born into, because of their own stuff, we'll call it stuff, sometimes aren't able to really receive that, and they have their own thoughts. And this is going back generations. This isn't just a new poof that just popped up. This is something that they have learned from their family of origin, and back, and back. So now here you are, having the torch passed to you, even if you don't even realize it, until maybe you're an adult and you're thinking, wow, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Wow, why am I thinking that way about myself? Where is that from? My own inherent worth and dignity was reduced, and sometimes unknowingly. Maybe most times unknowingly, especially when we're talking about family. We just don't realize it. Yeah. But here's one of the things. I did a research paper a few years ago on, there's more and more research being done about the human body and how we react to things. And one of the things is, what we need to survive as humans is protein. That's what gives us energy. Our body has something called neurotrophic proteins, which feed the neurons in our brain to help us connect with what's going on around us. And there's research is showing now that children that grow up in environments that aren't healthy, that can be abusive, that can be all the negative things, your body knows on its own, without you telling it, to stop producing the proteins, the neurotrophic proteins. Your body is saying, you're feeling way too much, there's too much going on, I'm not going to help you connect those neurons to get all that. It's a protective mechanism that our body does on its own. Imagine that. Your body knows you about your own inherent worth and dignity. And the flip side to that is that when you are in a supportive environment and you're surrounded by people who care and who love and who support you and who build up and remind you of your own inherent worth and dignity, guess what your body does? It starts rebuilding those proteins again and sending them to the neurons so that your brain can say, this is good. I need this. Kind of amazing stuff. This is all things that they're kind of discovering that's completely out of our control, but our own body knows our inherent worth and dignity. Imagine that. I was privileged, by the way, today is my 3-year-old's 4th birthday. So if she hasn't told you yet, she will. Which makes me think about, in case some of you may not know, they're both, Kate and Anna are both IVF children. They're test tube babies. And one of the steps in that process is injecting the embryo into the uterus. And I got to see that, right? A little crazy, right, science? Here's the thing. When both times, each time, the embryo was injected, there was a little flash of light. Maybe there's a scientific reason for that, I don't know. To me, that says that's that light we're born with. Poof. There it was. Both times. How often can you see that? So that made me think of that, because today's Anna's birthday. I got to see that more than 4 years ago, but you get the idea. Okay, time's flying. One more thing I've been involved with, and I'll end with that. I've been to 2 different week-long intensive workshops where you're there overnight for a week. One was at the Caron Foundation, one was at a place called Onsite down in Tennessee. And it was a room of about, one of the things that they had us do was, it was a room of about, I'll just throw a number out there, 60. And they had us pair up with someone of the same sex. And they had us sit in chairs pretty much identical to these actually, facing each other, sitting, pretty much knee to knee. And we were told to tell each other's life story without talking, without any kind of movements, just our eyes. We were told to just look into each other's eyes and tell that story. Tell your own story. I was paired up with a surgeon from Ohio who's a Bengals or Cleveland Browns fan, so there's a whole other argument with him, but because I'm a Steelers fan. But we were sitting there knee to knee, and I swear that was probably the most powerful thing I've ever been a part of. Ever. One of. It was only for 5 minutes each. And we looked at each other, and I'm watching him, and you can see what he's telling me somehow. And I just kept staring and watching, and everything else around here fell off. I didn't see the surgeon anymore. I didn't see the guy who has his own struggles with life and life experiences. It was something to be a part of. Again, that brought back, or just reinforced my own belief in the inherent worth and dignity of everyone. Just to have everything, it was surreal. Everything just kind of blurred, except his eyes. That's what we're born with. That's who we are. So in lieu of a closing hymn, you'll see it on your order of service. It's an audio CD from a YouTube video of all things. This is just the audio, but I can give you, or I can email you the URL for it if you actually want to see the video. But I'd like you guys to just sit back, and it's a 2-part audio. It's only about 5 minutes total. And just listen to what is being said. I'll warn you, the second part of it is very God referenced. Take what you can from it. Okay?
What makes you itch? What sort of a situation would you like? Let's suppose, I do this often in vocational guidance of students. They come to me and say, well, we're getting out of college and we haven't the faintest idea what we want to do. So I always ask the question, what would you like to do if money were no object? How would you really enjoy spending your life? Well, it's so amazing. As a result of our kind of educational system, crowds of students say, well, we'd like to be painters, we'd like to be poets, we'd like to be writers, but as everybody knows, you can't earn any money that way. Or another person says, well, I'd like to live an outdoors life and ride horses. I said, you want to teach in the riding school? Let's go through with it. What do you want? When we finally got down to something which the individual says he really wants to do, I will say to him, you do that, and forget the money. Because if you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you will spend your life completely wasting your time. You'll be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living, that is, to go on doing things you don't like doing, which is stupid. Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way. And after all, if you do really like what you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is, you can eventually turn it, you will eventually become a master of it. The only way to become a master of something is to be really with it. And then you'll be able to get a good fee for whatever it is. So don't worry too much. Somebody's interested in everything. And anything you could be interested in, you'll find others. But it's absolutely stupid to spend your time doing things you don't like in order to go on spending things you don't like, doing things you don't like, and to teach your children to follow the same track. See, what we're doing is we're bringing up children, educated, to live the same sort of lives we're living, in order that they may justify themselves and find satisfaction in life by bringing up their children, to bring up their children to do the same thing, so it's all wretched and harmonic. It never gets there. And so, therefore, it's so important to consider this question: what do I desire?
You've always been looking for something. That something that sets you apart. That something that makes you more than the person you're living as. More into the person you were created to be. What others see as mundane, you see as magnificent. You catch a glimpse of something new, and it becomes something significant. It's that something extra that keeps you up at night. The hours pass by while everyone else sleeps. You dream, you imagine, you envision what your life might be. What if you were born for more? There's got to be more than just this. I want to be used. That's your greatest wish. The demand for you has always been true. You are gifted now. What will you do with what you've been given? Will you put it into motion? Will you take on the responsibility? Will you follow after the calling God has placed on your life? To be fulfilled, to be engaged, to cast out all fears, doubts, and uncertainties, to stand strong, to rise up, to become who you were created to be. Who is the prodigy in you?